Hi all, this is Miss Sarah from Yukon Extension, and today we'll be learning about weaving through a potholder loom project. So in your kit, you should have one of these plastic looms with a metal hook and a bag, and the bag will have 18 loops of one color and 18 loops of a different color. And these are what we're going to use to make our potholder. And one of the colors is going to serve as the weft, and the other is going to serve as the warp. So that's up to you which you want to do. But essentially all of one color is going to go from here to here, and the other color is going to go from here to here. And you'll also find your Farming Connection card in this kit that talks a little bit more about weaving and different fiber types and some of the terminology and vocabulary we use when we talk about weaving. So I've decided that I'm going to use these purple loops as my weft, which is the left to right fibers, and I'm going to use the light blue as the warp, which is the top to bottom fibers. So these particular loops are made of 100% cotton, so you can do some research on your own to figure out how cotton is grown. It's very interesting. It's usually grown in a field and then it has a special way of being harvested. And these loops were knit or woven into a big long tube, and then they were cut to make these little cross sections. So weaving, there are lots of applications for weaving. You can learn a little bit more about those in your Farming Connection card as well, but they're a great way to create a durable cloth or textile. So something like a poncho or a jacket or a blanket, those are some of the applications. So we're going to start by stretching out one of our loops. They are brand new, so they're a little bit stiff. You have to work the fiber a little bit. And as you see on your loom, we have these little knobs, and that's what we're going to hook each loop onto. So there are 18 on each side, so it's going to be a perfect square when we're finished. And before I start, I just want to make note that these you can reuse. The looms themselves you can reuse, and you can reuse our hook, which is going to act sort of like our shuttle that you'll learn about in your Farming Connection card. So if you want to make more than one potholder, ask a parent or guardian if you can find some of these loom loops. These in particular are the 100% cotton ones made in America. And they are very durable. You can make lots of different kinds of potholders with them. So these two were made by my brothers. They're very similar to the kind that we're talking about today. They have one color going up and down, and they have one color going side to side. And then you could also mix it up and make some more unique and creative ones. So this particular loom has a white warp, and then the weft is alternating colors. So it has this greenish blue, and then a pink, and a green and blue, and then a pink. So there's lots of different ways that you can design these patterns to create a cool look for your potholder. And the potholders themselves make really great holiday gifts, birthday presents, etc., or just a nice thank you gift to someone in your life that cooks for you, that could use a potholder, or maybe you do a lot of the cooking and you could use this potholder. So I think I said I was going to use the purple for the weft. So I'm going to start by hooking one end of the loop onto my hook here and the other exactly opposite. So it's going to be strung like this. Make sure that you are going right across. So I don't want to make it so that I have a diagonal, and I also don't want to make it so that I have my loop hooked around more than one hook. I just want to go 1 to 1. So I'm going to string all of my purple loops, once again stretching them till you hear the fiber break just a little bit. You don't have to rip it apart because then it won't be useful, but just tugging on it lightly until it's stretchier helps a lot. So the next one is going to go right on top. Remember, I'm stringing all the same color all the way down here, and make sure that they're on really well. Put them down until they won't go down anymore on the plastic pieces. So once again, I'm stringing the third bump to the other third bump on the opposite side, and I'm just going to go down the entire length of the loom. So if you get to the end and you realize you don't have the same number of hooks filled on this side as you do this side, just go back and make sure that each loop has their own individual line. So these weft fibers are running parallel to each other, so that means they're running right next to each other. And if they were to continue going out, if they were going out towards infinity in opposite directions, they would never touch. Now the warp fibers are going to run parallel to each other, so all the blues are going to be next to each other, but they're going to run perpendicular to the weft fibers. So we're going to do it a little bit differently this time because now we're getting to the actual weaving. So you can shift your loom around to make it easiest to maneuver here, and essentially we're going to take one side of our hook here, and we are going to weave it through these purple fibers to get to the other side. So you will notice that because these are loops, you have 2 strings per loop, essentially, when you're looking at it like this. So when you're weaving through with your hook, you want to go under or over both parts of this loop. So you can choose the big side or the littler side of your hook. I'm going to try the littler side first, but I might change my mind. So I'm going to start by going underneath. Oops, we might have to tie these down with some tape. I'm going to go underneath my loop, this first one, so you can see. And I'm going to go over the next loop, under this third loop, over the fourth loop, under the fifth loop, over the sixth loop, under the seventh loop, and so on. So I'm kind of separating the loops in half. So that's where it's really important to make sure you're getting both parts of the loop either over or under your hook. So I'm going to do that down the entire length, under and over. There we go, until I get to the other side. You might find that putting some masking tape on this end and this end helps to keep everything in place. Then I'm going to stretch my blue loop. I'm going to hook it onto my hook, and then I'm going to turn my hook so that it lays flat, and I'm going to pull this blue through the weft, which now it looks like the warp because we twisted it. They're interchangeable on a loom like this, but on some of the other looms that are taller or freestanding, they will not be interchangeable. Okay, and then I hook that end right there on my opposite side. So now we have a blue loop that is in between every other loop of the purple. So we're going to do that down the entire length, except we want to alternate so that it stays together, because if we went the same direction, you know, under, over, instead of over, under, then we would have something that isn't necessarily woven, it's just kind of laying on top of each other. So for this next one, I'm going to go over my first, under my second, over the over the third, under the fourth, over the fifth, under the sixth, and so on. So it's the exact opposite of your first loop. So go ahead and give that a try. You can pause the video at any time to start working on this part of the project. hook this blue loop on here. And then I'm gonna turn my hook and pull it through. I'm gonna make sure that this end is on hook number 2, and then I'm gonna pull across. And loop it on the opposite side. And then I'm gonna just move this blue up so that it makes room for the third. So now our third blue loop is going to mirror the first, in that it's going to start by going underneath the first purple, over, under, etc. So I'm going to weave it through, and remember to get both of those loops underneath or over when you're weaving your hook through, so you're not separating these purple loops. You can squeeze that one up towards the front so that you have room for the fourth, and keep pushing these tops and bottoms down too so that they stay securely on the loom. You can add that masking tape anytime when you are noticing that it seems to be popping up. This one is twisted, so I'm just going to straighten it out. There we go. So now it looks better. Okay, so now with our fourth loop, we're going to do the opposite of the third. So with the third, we started under, and with the fourth, we are going to start over. And I'm just going to continue this down the entire length of the loom, and I want to make sure that each loop is directly across from itself. So I'm almost halfway now, and you can see that we have this hatch pattern being created. So we have these like little squares of color. So you should notice that this is pretty tight, pretty compact. Keep moving those individual loops up closer to the next so that you keep it close together so you can fit all 18 of your loops through your purple, or whatever color you've used for your weft work, depending on how you look at this square. So keep working on that, and I will see you once I have completed the rest of my loom. So I have added all of the loops, both blue and purple, and I had to use some masking tape when I was getting down towards the end of the loom because these loops have a lot of pressure on them and they want to bounce off of these little hooks, the red hooks on the loom. So putting some masking tape down can help to keep them on and help them to stop popping off. If they do pop off, there's so much memory because of all of the previous weaving that you've done that you can usually just pop it right back on to the loom. But if not, you can kind of look at the pattern of the weaving and figure out which parts of the loop that popped off need to go under and which need to go over. You can also ask a friend or a parent or guardian or counselor to help you hold down these loops as you're weaving. One of the main reasons that I stopped the video to finish working on this is that it can be easier to hold it in your lap, so you have a little bit more control over the loom than it is if you're doing it on the top of a table. So now that we have everything laid out on our loom, woven together, we need to bind off the sides so that these aren't free floating. Because if I were to just pop it off, the loom would, the weaving, the potholder would kind of unravel and it wouldn't hold its shape. So I'm going to use my hook again, and I think I'm going to keep these on for now on the ends, and I'm going to start with the blue sides. I'm just going to fold my masking tape around so that it's not in my way. So essentially what we're doing, if you've ever crocheted or knit before, it's very similar to that. We're going to use our hook, grab that loop. We're gonna pop off the first and the second loops, and we're gonna hold them on our loom. And then we're going to take the loop in the back, so the first loop, and we're gonna pull it over the second loop and off of the hook. So now I have one loop. So I'm going to take the next loop off of the loom. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to take the back loop. I'm gonna lift it over the front loop. I'm gonna lift it over the hook, and I'm going to take it off. So I'm just gonna repeat that. I'm gonna hook, pull over, and there we go. So I'm gonna continue that down the entire way. Hook, pull over, and let it drop. So now I've completely removed this first side off of the loom. So this has the binding on it, and it kind of looks like a braid. If you were to braid your hair, it looks a little bit similar to that because these loops are kind of intertwined. So I'm gonna keep my masking tape on this side still to hold these loops, and I'm gonna move to the next side. So I did this last loop the same way I did the previous ones. We don't have to do anything special with the corners. They will form themselves. So I'm just going to peel off this masking tape. I'm gonna try to do it kind of piece by piece. So, okay. Going to loop purple. I'm gonna lift the blue over the purple, and now I only have the purple left on my hook. I'm gonna loop the next purple, lift the original over the second one, and let it fall. So I'm gonna keep doing that all the way down the second side, and once you get a little bit farther down, you can twist it so that you're kind of working down the side. Whatever orientation of the loom makes this easier for you is the way to go. And you can have a friend or someone help you by holding down these loops, because there's a lot of tension, a lot of pressure tied up in the weaving. So sometimes these loops have a tendency to pop. All right, so I've reached the last loop on this side. So I'm going to do just like we were doing before. I'm going to loop it, peel it off the loom, pull the back behind strand forward, and now I'm at another corner. So you can see from this first corner, oops, I just pulled off a lot of my, hold on, give me a minute to fix that. Okay, so I fixed my weaving here. So this is the corner that I was trying to show you. So we didn't do anything fancy with the corner, we just kept going around as if it was straight, but it's naturally formed this right angle. So I have my last purple. I'm going to pick up my first blue on this side. So you can see I've added some more masking tape because that really helped me the last time. I'm going to lift the purple over the blue, and I'm just going to keep going with my next blue, lifting it over, etc. Okay, so here's a close-up of the corner step, just in case you're still a little bit confused. I have the last loop of the blue. I'm anticipating that this will be the most difficult of sides to work on because it's the last side. Okay, I'm gonna grab that purple, going to lift the blue over the purple and off of the hook. I'm gonna pull that a little bit tighter. And I'm just gonna keep going. All right, so I have this one left. I'm going to loop it like normal, and then I'm going to pull this loop out so that it's got a big hole. I'm going to pull it out as much as I can, and I'm going to knot it. So I'm going to twist it over itself so that this top loop is going over it and the rest is going under. And then I'm going to feed the end of the loop through the hole and pull it out the other side. This is part that you might need some adult assistance with because this can be challenging. So now I have a knot, and that's going to keep my loom from unraveling. And now you can kind of stretch the fibers out, work those fibers in the corners so that you have a more square shape. And if it's a little bit off, that is just fine because it's still going to be able to achieve its purpose of protecting someone's hand from a hot plate or from protecting a surface from a hot cup or a hot bowl. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to send those pictures to sarah.thomas@yukon.edu.